Over the holiday break, I had the opportunity to read this book, The Book of Dust, Volume 2, The Secret Commonwealth by Philip Pullman. So for those of you who have very short attention spans and were not very pleased with this book, I will tell you that there is another book. It's called Serpentine by Philip Pullman. This is an alternate ending than this book. So if you did not enjoy this book and you didn't like what happened in this one, you can have a second bite at the apple and you can try this one. This one is much lighter, airier, magical in my opinion. I really enjoyed this one a heck of a lot more than this book, so I wanted to put that out there to those of you who are only going to turn in for the first minute. Try and pick up Serpentine because I like this book a lot better than this one. So those are your options. I will take the same format that Murphy Napier did in one of her videos, which is I'll talk about 3 pros and 3 cons. When I read this book, so for many of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I have talked endlessly about how Philip Pullman is my favorite author and I'm his #1 fan. So when I read this over the holiday break, I honestly felt like a family member had died. When I finished reading this, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to give this a 1 star and I really don't want to do that. Is there anything that I can do to rate this a 2 star? Is there any way that I could justify rating this as a 2 star book? And I got comfortable rating this a 2 star book, and I'll go into the reasons for that, but we'll go into the 3 pros and the 3 cons. So the first pro that I will say is Philip Pullman is a wonderful author and he has beautiful prose. You can tell the way in which he writes, his writing style, the sentences, the way he writes, it's almost magical. And some of the way in which he writes is so impressive. And one of the things that I can point to is he'll have like a character put on a clean shirt. A clean shirt. When I hear that, I just feel and think it's something so small that he's pointing our attention to, but it makes a whole different point of view and a frame of reference. You're actually sitting down and taking a moment to look at the world around you, where normally we just, oh, I got dressed in the morning, you don't think about it. Those little things, I think if I were to become an author, that is what I would hope to aspire to. That would be my benchmark. The second thing I think this book does really well, and Pullman does very well, is the characters are very likable. So we have Lyra, we have Pan. Lyra is sharing her food with the hungry people on the train, even though she runs out of food and she's like in desperate need when she gets to her destination. Aww. She still really gives open-handedly. She's a very likable character. We have Malcolm. He volunteers to be a hostage and takes out a bad guy. These are both really likable, enjoyable characters. The third thing is that Philip Pullman does try to make the world a better place. If you go to his Wikipedia page, he does have a whole bunch of causes that he's tried to support over the years. In this book, he does talk about some of the situations going on a global scale, such as the refugee situation, and shedding some light onto that, where we have a tremendous amount of displaced people, what it would be like to be separated from your family. And also you may not be able to even speak the language, so there's not a lot of voice for the refugees because they don't speak the language. They may not be able to be as vocal about their situation as what they have. So I do really give props to Philip Pullman for tackling some of these big issues through the book, through the stories. That being said, there were some very significant deficits, in my opinion, with this book. The first one being there was no showdown. So I am used to reading Philip Pullman's books. I don't know if you can see these. These are all the books that I have read by Philip Pullman this year. So I would like to think that I have a little bit of authority on the author, but I will say this. Usually Philip Pullman, he has about a 100 to 200 page warm up before he really gets going. I was kind of expecting that with this big book, which is larger than all the other ones. I thought about the 100 to 200 pages. It was very philosophical, like snooze fest. Okay. Like this is normal. You just have to kind of put your time in and then the action really starts. You're really invested. Everything's going to be great. So 100 to 200 pages goes by. It's like, okay, it's very philosophical. Move along. It did get a little bit better, like at the 300 page mark. But by the end, it was shifting and I'm like, okay, where's the action? Where's the showdown? What's going on? By the time we got to the 600 page mark, and this book has about 640 pages, I'm like, ooh, I don't know how they're gonna have a whole battle in this short period of time. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, there's no showdown. Are you kidding me? Because in all the other books, there was a showdown or something at the end. It was like if you go on a scavenger hunt and you get the first clue and you get out all your materials, you get your map, your sunglasses, your binoculars, whatever. Then you go and you're trying to figure out the clue, and then you're going to scoop up the treasure where you think the treasure is, and then it cuts to black. Like, what? I mean, I could see you figure out or you dig up the treasure, and then on the top of the treasure is a little card that says, if you think this treasure is big, follow this clue to get to the second thing. And then you're so happy about how the book ended that you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go and figure out what the second clue is. And then you pick up, the next book in the trilogy. But this, it was just that cut to black before we even figured out the first clue. It was just like, are you kidding me? I stuck around for 600 plus pages and there's no climax. There's no resolution. Are you kidding me? Like, what a disappointment. What were we even building up to? So I was super disappointed. There was no showdown. It was just at the very end, like, oh, we've been waiting for you. That's not a showdown. That was called a letdown. Then number 2, this book was totally off-brand, inconsistent with the series and the characters. It was really dark. It was too dark in my opinion. And when I picked up The Golden Compass, which would be the first book in the series, I loved it. It was magical. We have armored bears, we have the zeppelins, we have the balloons, we have the demons, we have witches. It was magical and wonderful, and it was adventurous. I loved it. It was perfect. It was a wonderful escape, and it was just such a welcome book. And then I picked this book up. It was really, really dark. And I'll put up, there was, Pullman did an interview, I think it was with the New Yorker. And it says that Lyra is melancholy. He doesn't like using the word depressed. Melancholy. And it was melancholy. And it was even beyond melancholy. One reviewer put it, and I agree, that in the other books, it seemed that Lyra had the upper hand. It doesn't feel that way anymore. It just felt like the hits just kept coming. It was really a downer to read this book, and I did not, the shine of the magic wasn't there in this book. It was really disappointing, and that was so inconsistent with all those other books I showed you. All these books have a completely different feel. So if you buy these books and you think, oh, well, I'm gonna read Secret Commonwealth thinking you're gonna get the same as this, no. And I just didn't like, I personally do not enjoy this being this dark, and what he did to some of these characters, I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. For me personally, I'm just gonna try to block this book out as much as possible and think of Serpentine as the alternate ending, because it was just too dark, too much for me to take in. I don't even want my mind to go to where he took some of these characters. It wasn't for me. It was too dark. I didn't like it at all. The third thing that I didn't like was the betrayal of love. Now for this one, I will say, I've looked over this in the past. I did not like in the Amber Spyglass that Will and Lyra, they go on all these adventures, and then they have some, I don't even know how this came up. They had 2 weeks before they were supposed to part. And in the 2 weeks, they're like, I love you. How convenient. In the 2 weeks they have together, they magically fall in love. And then now Lyra is supposed to still be hung up on Will, like years and years later, even though she only met him for was in love with him for 2 weeks, way back in the Amber Spyglass, a long time ago. And it just seems, first of all, it gives love a little bit unrealistic expectation. Would she even like Will if she had to pay all their bills together and do expense reports and take out the trash and make sure all the bills get paid and make sure that the driveway gets shoveled? Like, I don't know. You might have a fun time when you're on an adventure, but it's different in reality and as an adult. But she's still hung up on this like relationship she had when she was 10 or 12 years old. And then all of a sudden, and for some like weird reason, she's in love with Malcolm and Malcolm's in love with her, even though they were together, or like he tried to teach her just a couple of years ago and it didn't go over very well. Like it just didn't, it felt creepy and weird, and I didn't like the portrayal of love in this book. It just seemed like super off. Now, what I am hoping for book 3, I hope that there is this really big redemption. If anything, I hope that Philip Pullman reads The Kite Runner, and like that's the type of redemption that I want to see in book 3. I want to be done with the dark and woe is me and the melancholy. I want to be redeemed. I want it to be redeemed like in The Kite Runner, but of course not Kite Runner. I want it to be His Dark Materials, but with that same like redemption, and that there were imperfect things. People are imperfect, but the way that they can come back from that and have that second chance and that reconciliation in a different, unique way, I really, really hope that that's what we get in book 3. If anybody has heard anything about when book 3 is going to be available, drop me a comment below. Let me know what you think of the Book of Dust Volume 2, The Secret Commonwealth, if you enjoyed it. Yeah, I struggled with this one, especially. I don't ever want to say anything bad about Philip Pullman. I have the utmost respect for him. He's like the Mr. Miyagi of writing. Like, how can you criticize Mr. Miyagi? I mean, you can't. So yeah, I was really conflicted about this review. All of you know that I am Philip Pullman's #1 fan, and I still am. I still think he's a fantastic author, a fantastic writer. I just think that the mood and the tone of this book was way too dark for my liking. I'm still looking forward to more adventures with Lyra and Pan. I do have Lyra's Oxford that I'm going to be reading in January, so look for that to come out. If you believe that books create ideas and ideas change the world, let's change the world one book at a time. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I'm Lisa of Troy. Peace.